감독님 안녕하십니까?
안녕하십니까? 반갑습니다.
반갑습니다.
많이 뵙고 싶었습니다.
야, 저도 감독님이고 정말 뵙고 싶습니다. 제가 한국에 와서 감독님을 정말 뵙고 싶었습니다. 예, 그래서 제가 제일 처음으로 본 영화가 태백산맥이었습니다. 야, 근데 그때 제가 그 영화를 보면서 상당히 깊은 감명을 받았는데 감독님께서 그 시기에 태백산맥을 만드신 좀 특별한 사연이라도 있으십니까?
예, 저는 이제 우리 한국이 이제 해방이 되자 좌익적 가족이 돼가지고 많은 고통스러운 일들을 당하고 했는데 도무지 동족끼리 이렇게 싸워가면서 뭐를 얻고자 했으면 실제로 얻어진 것은 뭐이며 이런 거에 대해서 굉장히 궁금해 오고 했다가 언젠가는 그 당시를 영화로 해서 우리가 뭘 살았는지 그런 걸 한번 같이 생각해보자.
저는 그때 그 영화를 보면서 저희 할아버지, 그다음에 저희 부모님들께 정말 그분들이 확신하고 몸을 바치고 진짜 피를 바쳤던 그런 공산주의와 사회주의 이념, 그것이 오늘 북한에서 과연 어떤 진실로 나타나고 있는가, 또 오늘 북한 사회는 어떻게 이런 사회로 되고 앞으로 어디로 가려고 하는가, 이걸 감독님 그 영화를 보면서 그 영화를 비추어서 그때 당시의 북한 사회를 새롭게 제가 재조명해보는 그런 계기가 되었습니다.
태공사님이 오셔가지고 이렇게 활기가 생기는 것 같아요, 사회가. 왜냐하면 통일에 대한 어떤 희망도 없었거든요. 그냥 서로 갈등만 하고 살았을 뿐이지 그것을 구체적으로 통일을 향해서 뭔가 이렇게 해집고 나가는 그런 몰입감도 없었고 해가지고 근데 굉장히 활기가 생긴 것 같아요.
감사합니다. 그래서 저도 통일을 빨리 앞당기기 위해서 저도 이제 최선 할 수 있는 모든 노력을 다 하려고. 네. 감사합니다. 건강하세요.
No, Deputy Ambassador Tae, I remember you telling me that one of the very first South Korean films you've ever watched was Taebaek Mountains by director Im Kwon-taek, and you just met him. What was that like? What was that experience like?
Oh yes, I never expected that, I could meet him, in my life, because it was the first South Korean film I ever saw in my life. It was, I think, in 1997 when I was working in Denmark as a secretary of the embassy. But the impression of that film, was so great because the first part of the film was just about the communist, the guerrilla warfare during the Korean War. But the second half of that film was about a kind of, the ideological debate between communism and capitalism. That was the period when North Korea was undergoing the most difficult, the economic stagnation. The people suffered a lot of, the hunger and famine. And so at that time, the people like me in North Korean system were wondering, whether North Korea has been undergoing the right direction or not. And the message of that mountain Taebaek was that the communism cannot overwhelm capitalism because the ideology of communism does not allow the independence of the human beings, and also the differences, of the ideologies and the different groups, and the classes of the society. So the film told me that the diversity of the ideology and culture in one society was always better than the monolithic system of the society. So the impression I got was so great at that time. I think the film, the Taebaek Mountain, gave me a kind of, new the approach, not only to the communist ideology, but also, it changed, the way, of my viewpoint towards the society and the happenings in North Korea.
Well, so obviously North Korean regime is where the dearth of outside information is particularly stark, I think. But these days we know that there is a abundance of South Korean films and TV series and Western cultural contents available in North Korea. How prevalent is that?
I think, North Korean population are just fed up with all those, government coordinated propaganda work and brainwashing content. So most of the people in North Korea watch South Korean films or dramas, at home privately, at night. So South Korean culture has already become one part of daily life in North Korea.
But it needs to be done basically like under the blanket. During the day, they would swear their loyalty to the Kim Jong-un regime. By night, they'd be under their blankets watching this. So this needs to be done secretively.
Of course, and I think, it is necessary to note that the past 10 years, North Korean film industry hasn't produced any significant drama or a film. These days, if you ask any North Korean people what are the most popular movie or drama in North Korea these days, nobody can answer because they even don't remember. To my impression, North Korean, the filmmakers have lost all kinds of enthusiasm, to make any films after they have seen the South Korean dramas and films because, the contents of South Korean culture was so, overwhelming,
So is it a daily life for, let's say, I'm presuming the North Korea's upper class to, sit down, relax on their couch every evening and just watch TV? Is that a normal daily routine?
Yes, the problem is that North Korea has a frequent power cut. So at night, even in Pyongyang city, only the central part of Pyongyang city can enjoy 2 or 3 hours of power supply. And the rest of the country, even in Pyongyang city, the people cannot have, the power supply. So if there is no power supply, you can't watch TV because, TV sets needs 220 electric voltage, while the small devices like Notel, which is made by China.
So these are small laptops,
yes, they're small laptops
made by China.
Chinese, yes.
By the Chinese,
yes.
And right.
They only use, 12 voltage batteries, Because of the lack of electricity and because of the curiosity for South Korean culture, the people just, enjoying themselves with South Korean movies and dramas.
With these Notels.
That's right.
Now, so what are some of the TV series or films that you enjoyed recently before coming to South Korea?
One of the, my favorite film was, I think, International Market. That film, I think, connected, the whole process of economic development as well as the people's, the hardships, in just, one piece of cultural contents. So I think that film actually gave me a quite different insight, into South Korean, history.
What about your wife? I'm sure she enjoys different contents than you.
She prefers a little bit very romantic, love story based, the contents, while I prefer, something historical.
Do you, the two of you, do you go to the movies together?
Oh yes, we have gone to cinema 3 or 4 times, I think.
To watch what?
Quite recent film was, I think, American film La La Land. That was the last film we saw.
Do your sons enjoy South Korean pop culture?
Oh yes, yes.
What do they like?
I really don't understand South Korean, the pop culture, and
Why not?
my sons like something like rap, which I don't understand. Maybe this is the generation gap.
So North Korea also has its own pop culture. I'm sure it's got its bands and singers. I know there's the Moranbong band. What are they like? Are they similar to South Korean singers, bands, groups?
Oh, I think they are not similar, but as far as Moranbong band is concerned, this band was organized by Kim Jong-un, himself.
Here in South Korea, celebrities or bands or singers or pop stars are either scouted by agencies or they audition for those jobs. How are celebrities made in North Korea?
Oh, North Korea has a very detailed education system, to bring up these the singers or musicians. For instance, the children usually start special education from the age of 5 or 6, very early. There are specially purposed music schools in North Korea, and once you prove yourself that you are very talented, then you just, go up through this special education system.
Is that preferred? Is that a favorable job? I mean, would parents want their children in those schools?
Yes, it is very favored school, and once, you are very successful in that, the system, then you can go up to the band like, the Moranbong, or whatever, and your life, rest of your life, will be comparatively, well off than the ordinary North Korean people.
What about your sons? Do they have any ambitions in becoming celebrities?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
What if they did? Would you be willing to support them?
I'm not quite sure, but I never thought, of my sons one day, becoming a celebrity or not. To my impression, my sons are a little bit more academical rather than, cultural.
I think all parents think that way.
Oh, really?
Now that you've been in South Korea, you've experienced the South Korean society a little bit, do you feel any differences between the reality of South Korea and what were depicted in South Korean films and TV series?
Oh, yes, there is a great difference, between the film or movies of South Korea and the reality. For instance, if you watch South Korean, romantic, the TV dramas, then it usually gives a kind of, different aspects of the life of South Korea, because many North Korean people, believe that, like, most of South Korean people are living in 2-storied, the villa houses with several, the luxury cars, or, and most of the South Koreans are making, frequent foreign, the trip or whatever, so that is not the exact, the I think, a depiction of South Korea's people's normal life. For instance, when I came to South Korea, I noticed, that even the old and retired people work very hard in this society. If you go to parking, you can watch the retired old men still working in parking areas. Most of the corner shops, are working nearly 24 hours. Young South Koreans are working very hard in corner shops or cafe shops as a kind of, part-time workers. So actually, South Korean society is very competitive, society rather than, slow or, easy society. But the North Korean people think that South Korea is very, a slow and very easy society. I think that is really a wrong impression which was created by some South Korean films or the movies.
That's because there's a lack of variety of genres and cultural contents that are available to them, right?
Yes.
Well, speaking of diversity, so I don't want to hog you and ask you all the questions. So we've had a couple South Korean citizens, the average Koreans, who wanted to ask you some questions. So first, we're going to take a look at that and come back for your answers.
Good.
우리가 지금 알기로는 그 북한에서 그 뭐 우리 드라마라든가 아니면은 그 아이돌 노래들도 많이 듣고 한다는데 보통 어떤 거를 드라마를 보는지 되게 궁금하네요.
I heard a lot of North Koreans watch a lot of South Korean movies, so I was wondering if there were any famous South Korean actors or actresses.
Is there a particular South Korean film star or actor, actress, or singer?
To be honest, I have no knowledge about South Korean idol group or, the girl group, because I think it is because of generation gap,
So is there any particular South Korean actor or actress that you like?
In late of 1990s and the beginning of the 2000s, I think the actors like An Sung-gi or the Chae Min-sik were popular, and when the Full House, the TV drama Full House was released in North Korea, then Song Hye-kyo all of a sudden became very popular, and when the TV drama series, the Immortal Recent Scene, was released in North Korea, the actor Kim Myung-min, became very famous. Later, his another TV series, Hayan Gotap, was released. Usually, the popularity of actors and actresses are changing even inside North Korea.
Wow, Deputy Ambassador Tae, you must know many more South Korean actors and actresses and South Korean TV series than I do. So I think that really basically makes a point how prevalent, how popular these South Korean TV series and films are in North Korea and to the North Korean public.
한국 문화에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하고 계시고 한국에 대해서는 실제 북한 주민들이 어떻게 생각하고 있는지 그것이 궁금합니다.
북한 주민들이 한국을 어떻게 생각하는지가 궁금합니다.
South Korean society, I mean the security of South Korea is very good. To my knowledge, the streets, are very well, maintained. But if you watch South Korean, action films, it sometimes gives a kind of impression that there are often, street fights between the group of, organized crime, organizations, or between those gangsters and police, So I think this kind of, the action films sometimes, because North Korean people haven't lived in the society, so they do not watch these kind of action films as a kind of one part of their cultural contents, but they accept these films as a kind of real life of one part of South Korea. I think that is a wrong perception.
Right, so basically they take fictitious contents and think it's nonfiction.
Yes,
they can't tell the difference between
because,
fiction and nonfiction.
Yes, North Korean population are not used to this kind of diversity.
What about, speaking of language, what about language? So there's specific terms or the kind of language that's evolved in South Korean culture. And when you watch South Korean TV series and whatnot, the language is a little bit different. It's not the official written Korean language.
There are some great differences in languages. I think in South Korean language, there are too much of foreign languages. There are too much English, I think. So there is a little bit difficulties in understanding for North Korean. But one of the interesting trend these days in North Korea is that North Korean young generation wants to imitate the language spoken by its South Korean young generation.
Such as?
The young people, have date. In North Korea, in the past, in my generation, we just call, the girlfriend, dongmu, or this a little bit formal way. But these days, the young North Korean, young generation, they call either oppaya or 자기야. These kind of languages, were even unthinkable, I think, 10 years ago. Yes, and
that's the influence of South Korean TV series?
Yes, that's right. And a lot of body languages of South Korea are also interested inside North Korean society. For instance, in the past, there was no such a kind of body language of love like in South Korea. You just like this or this. There are many body languages.
What's this?
I think this is
heart.
Yes, this heart. Yes, but because of these, Korean wave introduced the new body languages even to North Korean young generation.
Well, so obviously this cultural contents or soft power has immense influence when it's seeped into a totalitarian state like North Korea, closed-off regime. How do you foresee this soft culture, soft power, cultural contents seeping into North Korea change North-South Korea relations?
The introductions of South Korean culture to North Korea can reduce dramatically the haterism and hostile feelings, which were created because of Korean War between North and South. And secondly, I think it can reduce the social and also cultural differences between North and South. Before the arrival of South Korean cultural wave to North Korea, North Korean population didn't understand, what's going on inside South Korea. But these days, because of this South Korean wave, people do understand about the society of South Korea and also the way of life of South Koreans. I think so. The South Korean cultural wave, I think, is playing very important role for the preparation of future reunification.
And closing the gap between the North Korean society and the South Korean society that has evolved over the 7 decades of separation.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, another very informative and entertaining session today. We're going to end on maybe this today?
Or maybe this.
Maybe this.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much for today.
Okay, thank you.